farther from the river, but near the church we were just in is St. Peter's. This entire complex, I believe, in some way or another, is related to St. Peter's Church, which is there. And the castle, of course, in the background. A lovely fountain set up in the center. And what's nice is how they've put those, what look like reasonably comfortable chairs around the fountain for people to enjoy. What this would have been used for is interesting. Oh, it's a well. You can see the pump mechanism there. Huh. I wonder how old it is. It's unusual to see these large chapel-like settings on the interior aisle, or center, if you will, of the cathedral. to build this chapel inside this cathedral. This separate chapel room just to the right as you enter the cathedral, to me, is notable for these floor crypts, if you will, and the detail in them. They were not meant to be walked on like so many others are. The first church is letting loosely. We're going to go to the Friedhof cemetery. Here's a layout of the St. Peter complex. We entered through here when the church, and now we're here. We're going to go in and explore this area. Just this initial view gives you an idea of what an impressive position it had in the city as well as in this society. A young plaque of 1780. Of course, we saw these same kinds of plaques, the remnants of them, at another building used as decoration on the outside of the building, and as a way, in all fairness, of preserving those for the future without hiding them in the vaults of some church or museum. My guess is that the space we're in, and they were in, meaning the church, was so constricted that these were the most efficient way to utilize this space and still anticipate a future. And I suspect up on this level we're going to find individual side crypts, if you will, for important families who could afford it, like this one. As important as that looks, look how rapidly it seems to be losing its surface. Sometimes through outright damage it would appear that's been restored. Maybe not. Maybe this is just a way of showing us what it looked like in the day. In spite of my sometimes rabid cynicism, one can well imagine the contentment that a wealthy man in his day, highly religious day, had in believing his family would be forever couched in the safe palms of this religious site. Oh, this may be an entrance into a catacomb. At least these have been preserved, unlike the ones I saw in Edinburgh, which were simply hulks, devoid of anything. And they still use Roman numerals, which is ironical in the sense that it refers back, of course, to the Romans, who are the precursors of the Catholic hierarchy. Well, it's a peaceful place to rest, whatever that means. These are not that old. 1882, earliest birth date I see. No, 1805, excuse me, when Otto was born rather. Here's some pretty ones made out of metal. My bet is that when you're ensconced in these places, i.e. you've paid for them, that part of the contract is that this man or someone like him will periodically clean it, maintain it, which is a good idea. And up on the side of that cliff you can see that there's been some kind of structure cut into the stone as well as faced in the front with stone. These look like they were part of the original design of this smaller church in the back, this chapel. Pleasant place to rest if you believe you're resting in the arms of your God for eternity. I'll do a 360 pan just because it's an interesting context. Reminds me of the hanging monastery that I visited in China, between Beijing and Xi'an. This is Harry Collins, Major General, USA, March 1963. It's a heavy iron cross and plaque. Here beneath the castle and in a crevice between some of the buildings on the periphery of the St. Peter's complex is this little square, for lack of a better term, with an old water wheel, or at least what looks like an old water wheel, but at the very least it may be a replica. It's quite large, which begs the question, what was it for? What did it drive? This is a haunting statue, sculpture, work. Characters in books are often described as dressed like this, and their face unable to be seen, perhaps presumed to be not there. Take a closer look at this presumably older doorway. May have been restored somewhere in the last 400 years, but the massive hinges, which are interesting. But what I find interesting, this is a smaller door where you could pass packages through, but notice it can only be opened from the inside, and it has a little speaking device where you could talk through those holes. Kind of reminds you of bank tellers and police offices. Looking out of the residence now at the fountain. Same thing here with a little bit more impressive grille work above. Begs the question, what did that door protect? Was it the security entry protection where the guards hung out? And it begs the question then, what were these doors securing? And why not more aggressively so?